Good morning, everyone. All right, give them a little more coffee. Yes, I am Greg. So, in my role with actually two organizations, I serve as executive director. One I'm not going to spend very much time on because I really want to get into the subject today of diversity, equity, and inclusion and the authentic travel experience and how you meet expectations. But I did want to acknowledge all of the speakers earlier because their remarks were definitely accurate. My other role is Executive Director of PHL Diversity, which is a business development division with the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. We secure all diverse meetings and conventions. And as of 2014, we began securing LGBT meetings. But some of you may also know Visit Philly is without any doubt one of our great partners that launched the Get Your History Straight in Your Nightlife Gay campaign back in 2000. So it's an example of certainly the great things that can be done in different markets. I'll take you quickly through some of the things that I wanted to cover today. Aside from my short welcome, I want to share with you and introduce to you Tourism Diversity Matters, which is a new organization that was established in February to focus on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tourism industry. And then I wanted to dive into, I think, two aspects of what will further drive some of the remarks that you've heard today, looking at how you really align that marketing strategy, but more importantly, to talk more specifically and identify what we mean when we say authentic travel experience and how that meets expectations. So let me just start off by saying I am the newly appointed Executive Director of Tourism Diversity Matters. This is one of those COVID silver lining stories. Tourism Diversity Matters was created as a result of the death of George Floyd. Our president and CEO, Mike Gamble, has an executive search firm in Minneapolis, and he witnessed firsthand what was happening in our country and felt that we needed to do better, and that led to the creation of Tourism Diversity Matters. Tourism Diversity Matters is a national organization that's really focused on the blind spots of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tourism industry. And we do it 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're excited about it. We work very closely with our tourism leaders with the idea of providing them some specific strategies and best practices to be more effective in terms of their DEI efforts. There are 4 specific areas that we do focus. There's a program that's really meant to provide a pipeline of talent, and that's our apprentice program. We have a focus around workforce development, as you can imagine in the industry today. That is a necessity. But probably our sweet spot is the work that we do within diversity, equity, and inclusion, both from providing some fundamental educational programs all across the country on DEI, and in some cases, we even go further, work with organizations to conduct their diversity, equity, and inclusion assessments, really looking at the culture of their organization, how they can be more effective in terms of their DEI strategy. And this is really important as organizations struggle with how they can be more inclusive. A lot of organizations want to do something, but have no idea what they should do. And in that case, they want to gravitate to what they think is most popular or most exciting, when in fact it's more cultural, and we help them to understand the difference. And then, of course, as was mentioned earlier, we focus on research and data. We work with Temple University on the East Coast and San Diego State on the West Coast to provide us with research resources. So to jump into today's conversation, it is about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and looking at that authentic travel experience. So I wanted to put it into perspective. So there's 2 ways to look at this. I think initially any organization should have some sense of how they align their marketing strategy with whatever those target markets are. And there's a few ways that that can really take place. I think most importantly is realizing it's a mix of different types of communication that you would implement in order to receive or engage with those different communities. So it is about culture, and that was mentioned earlier, that it must relate to the cultural values. And it's not about finding some particular icon or image, but really embedding yourself and understanding the culture, diversity, and ultimately becoming much more culturally competent as you engage with the community. And then in language, that you are able to speak and communicate in a way that's beyond translation, but that there is a clear interpretation in terms of the communication necessary to connect with an audience. And then in person, we've heard a lot about being engaged, but it is about also showing up and investing on a regular basis and being very interactive with those communities, and absolutely something other than June or October in order to show your support. I'm from Philadelphia. I have to show you, these are our LGBT organizations in Philadelphia. And it's about being engaged and attending their annual events or their programs or workshops that they conduct. And that level of participation makes all the difference in terms of building your credibility and the validity to your efforts. So authentic travel experience. You've heard about authentic travel experience, and I wanted to maybe add a little more context to it.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
All right, so when I was trying to find a way to launch a discussion about authenticity, I love that video. Actually, it had me dancing when I was at home, but I felt I couldn't do that here. Just doesn't work with this look. So anyway, authenticity. You know, I look at that video, and when we say authenticity, I would say when you hear that word, the expression that you saw in those people's faces are what we're trying to achieve. However people talk to you about it or add that sentence in, does what they say deliver what you just saw? Because that's what authenticity is. Authenticity is a very important aspect of what travelers expect today because they want to find an experience that is meaningful. Something is as real as they can possibly get. To go a little bit further, it's also about understanding that they want to be participative in whatever places and artifacts and activities that are associated with the destination, and that these stories really help to represent their past and their present. So some of the benefits of it and why we're talking about it so much is because it's allowing you to have a deeper connection. There's a human sense of legitimacy to whatever it is that you do, and that it helps to reduce the skepticism that people may have. Now, once again, it is about having those smiles, those laughter, those wide open eyes that are tied to it. And the more you are able to do that, you become contagious. You know, as I was listening to Cedar Rapids, that's what you want to be able to do. Engage people in such a way that they're excited and they want to go and tell your story over and over and over again, even to those who may not even believe it. So there are 5 action steps that you would really tie to it. I want to take you through. The first is that you want to uncover whatever that authentic insight is that you want to deliver, and that you want to create one big idea, something that is really going to draw people to it. Find out what that authentic voice is. What is it that you're trying to tell? And then select your authentic spokesman. And then finally, make sure everyone's on board. And we did talk about that in some of the earlier remarks. But let's just start here as we talk about meeting the expectations. And it is about uncovering your authentic insight. You want to start with what is a clear purpose. How can you create something that is going to address a real challenge and allow you to be a real hero in that space? And whatever it is, that it has to become a red thread that carries through everything, whether it's your marketing plan, whether it is your advertising plan, whether it is your organizational statement, whatever it is, that has to be tied to everything that we see and touch about your organization. So think big, but carry it through so that it completely connects. You also want to create a big idea that really helps to bring your ideas to life, something that will connect with people. I love that story about the building. I would use that building over and over again because that's something that allows people to connect. They wouldn't expect it. So the next time I would have it grow in your video so people can actually see how bright it is. But once again, that big idea is something that will allow you to be stronger and more impactful. So finding your authentic voice. So what's really important here is that it doesn't have to be you. Reach out to the people in your community. When we had talked about connecting, and I showed you all those different organizations that we have in Philadelphia, they are the greatest spokesmen for you. Have them become the engaged voice. Help them create a tone as well as giving them some clear indication of the kind of communication that we want to be able to share. But that authentic voice truly matters. There was an organization that was that was based in a real tough city, and they wanted to find out, how do we tell our authentic story when we know we have racism or we have bigotry? But there are people who live in that community who fight against that. And that's the authentic story that you want to tell. That's the level of perspective that you want to provide. So it's not always focusing on what may be negative in the space, but who are the people who fight against the negative? That helps to create, and that's truly an authentic voice. So it was mentioned earlier, and I have to, take a minute here and say, listen, I'm the vice president of our LGBT chamber in Philadelphia. And I'm very passionate about everyone has to be on board. When you create a campaign to promote a destination for LGBT, everyone has to be on board. And when I say everyone, I want to take a few minutes and kind of dive into it. So know before you go. So the first thing is to make sure that LGBT businesses are supported. I cannot emphasize that enough. In your community, who are the LGBT businesses and how are they given business opportunities? Not just as a result of bringing in LGBT meetings, but when any meetings are here. Oh, there it goes. So I would encourage you to ensure that there is, without any doubt, participation and contracting opportunities for your LGBT businesses. The second is to look at those LGBT communities, where LGBT people live, and engage those communities. They should also be able to benefit and thrive from it. If you have knowledge experts coming in from different parts of the country, engage them in those communities. Perhaps they can participate in an educational program or workshop, but realizing that those neighborhoods are important. So know before you go, make sure there's an LGBT community that you can tell a story about. The other is, does your organization, your destination host various types of LGBT events and celebration? If so, let's promote those. Let's give them opportunity. And it doesn't have to be the big pride thing. It can be a small workshop that they host in terms of engaging trans business leaders, or programs that are going to provide young people opportunities and ways of being involved in the LGBT community. Whatever it is, those are the stories and those are the things that you want to be able to tell. Is there a bridge between the LGBT community and the police compartment? This is really crucial, especially as you think in terms of engaging trans visitors to your community. And while we talk about LGBTQ, I really want to emphasize the trans community, because when they come into your destination, and you can do some great campaigns, get it, but what's the level of safe that they have when they're there? If they are out 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they need to find transportation back to their hotel, is it available and is it safe? So realizing that the correlation and the affiliation and the relationship with the police department is pivotal as you launch a campaign targeting the LGBT community. And also, what are the type of protections that are located, that are legislated in your city? That is crucial in terms of, once again, showing the true culture, the true fiber that's built within the community in order to welcome various guests. So I leave with this particular thought because it's really important to know that in order to be a leader, you really have to go beyond equal opportunity. You must be able to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, and realize that it serves as a strategic advantage. And we've heard from Cedar Rapids how it is a strategic advantage, but it is something that is long-term. It's a journey. I caution you with the phrase initiative, task, group. This is something that has to be woven into the DNA of your organization. It's something that has to live long beyond you and provide the benefits of what you intend for your particular community. So realize that diversity, equity, and inclusion, that it is a journey and that it's not a sprint. So I was asked to leave enough time for questions, so I left a few moments. So if there are some questions, I'd love to answer.
Thank you, and congratulations on your new post. It's very
Thank you.
exciting. Are there ways, specific ways that as a city or a destination or tourism office that we can engage and connect with these points directly with people on your staff? And do you have any success stories that you can share specifically?
So let me go back. So in terms of Tourism Diversity Matters, how you'd reach out to us, you can reach us at tourismdiversitymatters.org. We'd love to work with you, whether it's looking at some sort of assessment of an organization, or if you just wanted to do some sort of specific type of DEI workshop. We tend to focus on more of the fundamentals because what we've certainly found in our industry is most people want to dive directly into what's the most provocative and the most complicated subject, and there's a difference between what they think they need and what they really need. And we help to clarify that. So a lot of organizations will want to dive into DEI and have absolutely no idea of how to even define it, or for that matter, what are the dimensions of diversity and which are really more of a priority for us to focus on. So we work very closely to help to do that. From the assessment side with organizations, it's crucially important because there are operational issues with how they approach DEI, and then there's cultural issues just in the nature, the DNA of the organization. And most organizations need to have some assessment of their culture first. And then in terms of a success story, if I were to give you an idea of a success story, I think of the work that we did at the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau with the LGBTQ Chamber. So the Chamber was not known for being diverse and inclusive at all. Great group, but certainly lacked a representation of diversity at board and membership. Through the work that we did at PHL Diversity, we invested. Instead of complaining, we invested dollars and time. We gave them $10,000 over 3 years to build what became the Intersections program. So the first year, the focus of the program was to reach out to diverse communities to engage with them. The events that we did had to be in those communities, and there had to be 50 people from those communities at each event. And when we held our first one, which was in the Hispanic community, the entire guest list was Garcia, Rodriguez, Lopez. It was fantastic to see it. But that then became part of the regular database, and we did the same in the African American, the Asian community, first year. Second year was more deliberate discussions where we actually built workshops as to why the African American community is not engaged with the LGBT chamber, and similar throughout. And then the third year was customized program. What was the kind of programming that would really connect with those communities? That level of engagement over an extended period of time was extremely powerful, not just from what we wanted to do in terms of getting more diversity in the chamber, but it also meant that more diverse communities were interested in everything from their annual event, their business award, their scholarship program, because there was a much deeper engagement with those communities. So much so that they did receive an acknowledgement and an award from the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce for one of the more creative programs to create more diversity. The end to that story, and the most important part, is that in order to be successful, you have to be long-term committed and you have to invest and realize that this is not something that you'll just fix. It'll take time to build the relationships. It'll take time to build the commitment, and ultimately it will slowly begin to be beyond whatever you had directly focused on. Great. All right.